When introducing the two sounds of C, there are several things that you will need to keep in mind. First of all, this looks like a really easy rule. It is not. It is difficult to remember, particularly for the spelling aspect of it. The rule is C says S with an E, I, or Y, as you can see by Gentle Cindy's face. Now, I say with instead of before or after because those terms are frequently confused. It really is if the E, I, or Y is coming after the letter C. You definitely want to link what they already know to what you are about to do. So they already know that S makes that S sound, and they already know the letter C, and they've known it for quite some time. In fact, they even know that jingle of K takes I and E, C takes the other three. That's to keep that C as a hard C, that K sound. Now we're going on to the next sound. You have two options when doing this. If you have a beginning student, you may decide to just deal with C says S with an E. If you have a more advanced student who knows several other rules, you may want to do C says S with an E, I, or Y. So if you have a beginning student, you're still going to show them this Gentle Cindy picture. They definitely can draw their own picture, and they're trying to get this visual in their head. When they do trace, copy, cover, closed, they will trace that letter C and say, C says S with an E. If you do the entire rule with more advanced students, they will still trace that letter C, but they will say C says S with an E, I, or Y. When you go to add these cards to your deck, realize that there are 8 cards that you will add. Now, there are notes on the backs of these cards to help you remember that you're not going to shuffle these in with the rest of the deck because it's a different cognitive task. This card, or all of these cards, are just showing you that C with an underline and then a letter after it. They're only supposed to tell you the sound that the C is making based on the letter that comes after it. So if you have only introduced C says S with an E, then obviously don't put in the CI or the CY card. However, if you've done the entire rule, then you're going to want to put all 8 of these cards in. I would rubber band them together so that when you shuffle your cards each day, these don't get shuffled together. They stay at the back of the deck. You're going to want to do this I do, we do, you do. So if I am just introducing this rule, I will point out to my student, okay, I'm looking at this first word and I see I know that that A is going to say its name because the E is going to jump over one letter and kick him. And then that C has an E after it, so it's going to make that S sound. So when I sound this out, I'm going to say A, S, face. If I look at that next word, even though the C is at the beginning of the word, it doesn't matter. It still has an E after it, so it's still going to make its soft sound. So that word I'm going to look at and say S, n, t, scent, like 1 cent. Now, let's try some together, and I would talk them through at least 2 words and ask them questions about what is that E doing in that first word, what's it doing to the A, what's it doing to the C. Let's fingerspell this together, and then I would do the same thing with the word sell before I had them go on and do some on their own. Obviously, I would have them do words and sentences, reading and spelling, but maybe on day 2, I would address this issue of CE at the end of a word. If you hear S at the end of a word and you are not making it plural, you have to know that it's going to be CE. So look at that first word. It's going to be FENCE, because if you wrote FENS, well, that would be the plural of fen, which obviously isn't a word. And I would talk my way through lots of words like Lance and France. Perhaps on day 3, I would spiral back to the floss rule and add in floss words with gentle Cindy words, because now they have to keep track of, is it an S, is it an SS, or is it a CE? If you have more advanced students, definitely do all of what I've just explained with this C says S with an E. But when you get to the I, know that there's only one syllable word with this I after it, cinch. If they know rabbit, well, that syllable division, then you can add in words like pencil and excite and citrus. If you're going to give them circus, make sure you've already taught them IR says You can get into more advanced things like acid and civic and civil if you've taught them tigers and camels, but don't just throw in the word circle just because you're teaching C says S with an EI or Y. They have to also know turtle syllable divisions. In order to practice this C says S with a Y part, well, they definitely need to know rabbits. They need to know tigers and camels. They can even know more advanced things like OU says ow, and they have to know Y says E at the end of a 2-syllable word in order to read bouncy. You can get your students to sort with spelling. So if you say the word is say, is that going to be a C or an S? How come? What about the word space? Would it be a C or an S? How come? And if they tell you a C, how come? Well, because there's an E. Okay, so I'm going to pretend that you said it's an S. If you have the word space and I put an S in that blank, it's not going to say space. How come? And then you can do the same thing with words like brace and bus. So just remember that this rule is not as easy as it first appears. When you get to that auditory drill, you're going to be asking from now on, what are the 3 ways to spell S? You can get them to compare words like I just did, like this is race, how come it's not RASE? And just like many other rules, there are a lot of homophones that will come into play here. So feel free to also incorporate some of those, like, yes, there is this kind of scent, but there's also this kind of scent. Or there's this kind of sight, but there's also this kind of sight as well.